All right, welcome to part two of today's social distillation, which is the season two finale of Amazon Prime's Wheel of Time. And I needed, I'm not sober October with you, but I did figure after my drink last time I needed to slow down. But then I remembered what we were talking about, and I decided, well, I'll just switch to beer instead of gin. So I
Well,
got
I've
that
I've
here.
just been going back and forth and making it uh the
That's not bad.
my problem with drinking wasn't that I drank, it's that I drank indiscriminately.
Mm.
Where, sitting there reading a book, drink, watching a movie, drink. The After work, just hanging out, drink. So if it's a social occasion, okay, whatever. Because we're going to Renfest this weekend. I'll probably have a few beers or meads or whatever and that kind of stuff.
And a turkey leg.
Oh,
Get
I
yourself
gotta
one,
have a turkey leg. Uh,
clearly.
but yeah, it's just like, so when I was in Germany, I was able to really do just when it's part of what everybody
Mm.
what we're all not everybody's doing it, so I'm going to do it, but it's part of the atmosphere. It's part of what we're doing. Yeah, you're at a beer garden, you're going to have some beers, right?
Mhm.
So that's what I kind of committed to this time. So, but we're being social and we're talking about Wheel of Time, so
All right, so here was my thought. It was awful. It was hard to get through. And,
this
and
was to me the worst episode of the whole series.
and it really typifies what we talked about. Which was it? I was just looking at our homepage here. And I'm actually annoyed at your episode 211. The title says it all, victims of their own making, right? That's you made this mess. All
Mm-hmm.
right. It This finale was terrible because you set up nothing but crap. Okay. I will say I'm annoyed at your thumbnail though, because that is one of my favorite movies, and she is one of the reasons that movie is so great. Is the what is the thumbnail you have here is Bookman Showman, and it's the landlady from Kung Fu Hustle, and I love her. I love that movie. But no, that's not Min. Okay, but that's the point of that. Um,
Yeah,
but
but you
even
got what I was saying there. That the one on the
exactly.
left is kind of more how we imagine her, but the one on the right is what we got, because it's not only the weird Asian girl, but it's this macho tough girl kind of.
All right, so I kind of think I'm just gonna riff off of you here, because after watching it, I had thoughts as to watching it, and then when I got to the end, it just kind of occurred to me the final scene, the final shot of that episode to me
The money shot.
typifies exactly. The money shot was very anticlimactic. It was very oh okay.
Yeah,
So
I'm
it,
bringing
it
up a meme for that. It might be the meme for this episode. Uh, yeah, keep talking. Here we
so
go. I
so to
found it.
me, just that scene to me encapsulates why this series is not just this series, but so much of modern writing is so terrible.
Okay, so let's skip to the last scene and then we'll go through the whole show. So if you're here just for the climax, then we're about to prematurely ejaculate for you. But this right here like exemplifies it for me, because had we got an ending that
Mhm,
was more true to the book with
mhm.
this kind of cinematics, it would have been better than what came out,
Eh,
because
eh,
what we got was an ending not true to the books and this kind of cinematics. So
mhm.
we wouldn't have been giving up much with the Rand and Balsamon in the background, to compared to that stupid ass dragon with that stupid ass scene after that whole stupid ass episode.
This actually ties into what we were talking about in part one, because one of the thoughts I had, because you said the stupid ass dragon, is we've talked before about one of the reasons that higher education's costs have ballooned is if you simply look at the facts and figures of the number of vice presidents for diversity and inclusion and various other crap like that. The administrators, the administrative cost of universities and colleges has skyrocketed relative to the cost of actual faculty. And I keep thinking, I would love to see the books of something like Amazon Studios, because we know from reported figures that things like Rings of Power and Wheel of Time supposedly have huge budgets, but I don't see it on the screen. Sometimes you see, and we've mentioned when it looks good. We pointed out, like that opening shot from either episode 6 or 7, where it's that opening shot coming in the fall. That actually looks pretty good. That looks like a real city. I can believe that's a real city, and it looks like a cool medieval fantasy-ish setting, right? So much of this episode just looked like hot garbage, just looked cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to think a lot of it is administrative overhead cost it is part of the costs of these episodes, and it's not actually stuff that's going on the screen.
And you didn't even need special effects to have the effect. You could have saved whatever it cost to make that dragon by having Rand and Balsamon have a fight, everybody else doing their fighty thing, and then afterwards have one of the characters saying, finding Rand like we found him in the books where he's injured and everything, and it's kind of reminiscing on, you were up there in the sky, we could see you fighting the Dark One.
Yeah.
And even speak, and him saying something, since we already know he knows this, not the Dark One, saying it wasn't the Dark One. You never had to have that scene except for in separate instances. You could have had him fighting Ishii and everybody fighting, and at some point them looking up, and then a scene later where they kind of orate it just a little bit.
And the way it's
and he
described in the
walks, even you can
yes.
have it with this, the way they set this up, they had to set him up to be the dragon right away, him walking out and everybody like being in awe. You didn't have to do this stupid.
And the way it's described in the books and the way you would imagine it, it wouldn't actually have to look that seamless. You could make it look, fuzzy and insubstantial. So you wouldn't have to spend a ton on it to make it look pristine.
Yeah, and the only thing you would need special effects wise is something that indicates, even if it's very subtle for just the book fans, that Ishii and Rand went from the real world to the dream world. That you would need that little bit of something, maybe Rand walking through some fog to get to him, and Ishii waiting for him, or something along those lines. You would just need that little bit of something to kind of give it to the fans that this is the moment. But other than that, it would have been fine. So, I mean, let's go back to the beginning. The beginning of the episode, I actually don't have much to say about the scene where Lews Therin is trapping Ishii, because story-wise, it's kind of how they had to do it. And you get a little bit of oration of the fact that Ishii, which you already got with him talking to Matt, that he just wants to die. But in this scene, the problem with it is you don't separate physical death from the ultimate death.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about dying. It's about having the ultimate death, or else you wouldn't have rebirths, or you wouldn't have the whole Matt storyline without that. So
my thought when watching that was, this was done better in Superman 2, which I think came out in 1979.
Oh yeah.
When Zod and his people were thrown into the Phantom Zone, it was like, oh, okay. In large part because even with the cheese of 1979 or 1980, whenever that Superman 2 came out, with the cheese of those special effects, you knew something otherworldly was happening. What they did in that opening didn't really advance the story, didn't really tell you anything new, and in some ways,
well, here's what they missed with it.
Okay.
here's what they missed with it is we didn't get the the freaking taint. That's where the taint should have happened with the way they're telling this story.
Mm-hmm.
And that would have been the thing that kind of put a little prologue to the episode
Mm-hmm.
that would have completed kind of a cycle, because now we would have known exactly where the taint came from. We would have known that this whole locking away of Ishi and the Forsaken was where it came from. If you're not a book reader, that would have been a very important thing to have right there, because we still have no explanation of where the taint came from. We know it was a counterattack from the Dark One, because the Emerald Seat in the first season told us what was going to happen because she knew better, because she was a girl, but
Mm-hmm.
we didn't actually get it happening there. So when did it happen? If this was the last seal to be made, when did the freaking taint
So
happen?
this was another thought I had while watching this, is that because I was kind of going back and forth in my mind about the idea of individually imprisoning the Forsaken, and that is what the seals are, not the seals to the Dark One's prison as a whole, but individually binding the Forsaken somehow. And it kind of occurred to me, either the creators of this show don't know how to portray the existential ideas of the book series, or they don't understand them, because they're trying to make this idea of the Dark One and the Dark One's prison tangible when they're not. That's the whole
Well,
point of them.
but even in the books, you had the seals, so there
Mm-hmm.
was a tangible element to it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but so a victim of their own making. Here's a victim of the fact that they just, as I brought up in the very beginning of the first episode, I think they're writing this thing in the fact that we don't think we're going to make it a next season, a next season, a next season. To have a battle that is different than the individual trappings, you would have needed all the Forsaken to be cast already.
Mm.
And it would have made no sense to have just two there and then other Forsaken show up later and be like, oh yeah, we were there in the background, you just couldn't see us.
But yeah, right, but they've done similar things before, and you could do that if you had Ishi and Lanfear, and then at the very end of this we had Malkidian, anyone that you are for sure cast, and then in the back you have shadowy figures that you can't see distinctly.
Yeah, but that costs a budget, and Rafe's got to get paid.
Uh, unless you cast extras, and then you just have to give them lunch.
True, and stamp their cards so they can apply to the Screen Actors Guild. But
Yep.
then we get to Bornhold's camp, which is in this little oasis that somehow doesn't have a town around it, as in deserts that we normally get. And nobody's keeping track of this oasis, that it should be a place where
I,
people would gather. But yeah,
this
this
hold on a
is
second.
this is a scene where they really just were bringing together the son and the father. That's to me what came out of this. They were just
Now,
establishing that they were there together.
t- this scene is great because it illustrates the look. We can be charitable and creditable when we need to be, and one of them is obviously the younger Bornhold wasn't there. He found out about this after the fact in the books. However, when you're trying to fast forward and condense things, this works. I have no problem with this.
Yeah,
You know,
that's I first saw this when they had Bornhold in the last episode,
mhm.
because they were
Yeah,
just putting together Bornhold knowing who Perrin was.
exactly. I saw exactly what was coming, from the very beginning of this episode.
And predictability isn't always bad, because if
Hmm.
predictability makes sense, then just the stories going on. Not everything has to
But
be a surprise.
but then you have to execute it, and we'll get to that later.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
So in that sense, on the good, I didn't have a problem with with younger Bornhold being there. That it worked. It made a better uh uh it made for a better dynamic in a condensed setting than uh uh oh I'm brain farting on the guy's name. Child
Mhm.
Buyer is who it was in the books, who
Yeah,
was
they did combine younger Bornhold and Buyer. Yeah.
so That worked for me. But what was still
You know what?
bothering me is what you
Actually,
said.
let me give them the credit. Let me give them credit.
Okay.
Let's get a little nuance here. They combined Bayer into all three:
Mm,
younger, older Bornhold, and Valda.
mm.
You've got the
Yeah,
zealot,
yeah, yeah.
you've got the sidekick, and you've got the rule maker. Older Bornhold is very strict compared to the older
But
Bornhold in the books.
but they did a very good job, whether it's the actor or the writer or director, whoever, on purpose or on accident, they did a very good job of portraying the reason the elder Bornhold is a sympathetic side character is because he's actually a true believer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, compared to a lot of the other children we meet, he genuinely believes that he is serving the light, and not just the light as an abstract concept, but because that is what helps people, that he genuinely cares about people. As much as you know that he's the bad guy in the eye of the world, he's likable because Jordan writes him in a way that you can tell he genuinely wants Perrin and Egwene to come to the light for their own sake, not because these are the strictures that he has dedicated his life to, but because, these young people need, repentance, need a better life, need to get away from these bad things that have bound them. And so they do a very good job of portraying that. But to the point
Well,
of,
okay, so this is for future episodes. In our social episodes, topics we've been thinking about them. This and the Shanshan dynamic we talked about in our Winter's Heart episode, or did we talk about it in our episode? One of the two or both. We talked about how good the life of the people got when the Shanshan got there.
yes,
And you talked about the benevolence of
we
Elder
talked about the
Bornhold.
last book episode because you see that
Yeah,
in
and I brought up
Water,
the
yeah.
fact that I'm more libertarian, and it's really a struggle here. We need to do an episode on laws and freedom and the balance
Mm-hmm.
between the two,
Mm-hmm.
because there is an oppression in lawlessness that occurs as well, but there's an oppression in laws. So
Sure.
I want to give kind of a overly deep thinker that gets up at 2 a.m. and can't sleep because he's got Uptown Girl stuck in his head for some reason, kind of perspective on this. No, the last time was
It happens.
Roxanne.
Oh, I hate
You
that
don't
song.
have to put on the red.
I
What,
hate
you
that
know what?
song.
After 30 years of listening to that song, I finally listened to the lyrics and I had it completely wrong. I thought it was like a baby it's cold outside thing. You don't have to put on the red light. We can get together. No, you listen to the lyrics and it's like, you're a prostitute, but you don't
Yeah.
have to do that anymore.
Yep.
I had no idea until I actually just sat down and paid attention.
Oh
And then
yeah.
it got
No.
stuck in my head.
I hate it because I just find it obnoxious musically. Anyway, speaking of
Anyway, okay, but
obnoxious,
yeah, that's side
so
point. That's a good episode topic, I think.
so the problem, so that's the good with that scene with the children, but I still don't understand, to your point about, look, there's an oasis and nobody's here, which you would think there would be in a desert, which brings me to the point that I still don't understand is, why did they feel the need to make Falm into a desert? It's not in the Tolman Head is not a desert in the books. Why did they feel the need to do this? It doesn't make sense. And I would think, back to seeing the budget on the screen, I would think going to and filming in a location like this is going to be more difficult than not, especially with the other exterior locations that we have seen.
well, we talk about combining things and just really trying to fast forward elements. What they needed was ways to make it an isolated place.
Mm,
And what's more isolated than a port in a desert, right? Because
true.
you're not going to have a whole lot fanning out from that. Something like Tyr, you've got cities fanning out from it. Ibudar is a great
But
example. You'd have cities fanning out from it. Tanchico, yeah, they talk about how the influence of the rulers don't fan out, but it's pretty much village to village to village to village to village. What they wanted to get was the idea that Falm is kind of out there, and it's an
right.
island within the land, which means you need desert around it.
But They already ruined that in what was it, episode 2? Where Suroth and the Sanchans show up and attack this random village. How the hell far did they have to go to get out of the desert? Because they're clearly not in a desert there. And when they're in that caravan that Perrin's in, where Ishi comes and talks to him, and the wolves come and break them loose, they are clearly not anywhere close to a desert because they're in a big freaking forest. They're in a big temperate forest.
Don't expect continuity, my friend. But they're
But
also combining things. I think this is supposed to be Aradoman as well, which is very Arabic in feel when you read the books. And of course, this is the simplistic mind of these creators: is Arabic means desert, which is not always the case.
which is why I brought up, last time, that one of the interesting things to me was the way that Jordan took disparate elements of the real world. For instance, the Shinarans, the way they're described culturally is very much in keeping with the Tokugawa samurai. The I mean, for crying out loud, they do poetry. They do calligraphy and poetry. That is very much the archetypal, warrior poet samurai. But the way they are described physically and the way that they are described martially, they are the heavy European cavalry. They are more like the Germanic heavy cavalry of the late Middle Ages. So he mashed those two things together. These creators do not have the ability to think in those kinds of terms because they are so obsessed with current day identity politics.
Yeah, well, you can go to the Aiel. They were modeled after Zulu and American Indians, specifically some of
And,
the more nomadic
and,
desert tribes.
and with a little bit of the Hebrew thrown in.
Yeah, and so it's like we got two opposing ends of the world being represented here. But yeah, it's let's go ahead and move from geography. It's frustrating. This whole episode is frustrating. They go to the ways again, and I'm going to say it's cheap.
It looks
again.
cheap. Yep.
Completely cheap. But we needed to be there so Moiraine can be burst out into the middle of nowhere, which is supposed to be somewhere, and Lanfear is pushing the plan. Which is it fate or is it Lanfear's plan? We don't know because they haven't established the whole Tavaren thing as it's supposed to be. They just said, you're Tavaren, you're Tavaren, you're Tavaren, everybody's Tavaren. Yeah.
If everybody's special, then no one is.
Yeah. So then we get to Perrin's approach to Falm, and it's so, I don't know what to say about this scene because it's so just meh in so many ways. Then we get this mist coming, which how that became a white cloak tactic, I don't know. You're sending children in front of you into battle like sacrifices. I don't know.
Okay, but that was bizarre that they have.
We'll get to that when they actually get there and you know what they are. But we see the mist coming. But then the Aiel, we're going into a major metropolitan area that hasn't dealt with Aiel. So when we're talking about book 5, book 6 of the Wheel of Time series, they are the force that came in and, depending on who you were, saved the day or are invaders. One of the two. But they're there for that reason, and you know who they are. When we get to book 3, they go through Tyr in the shadow of the night because they know they stick out like a sore thumb by the way they look, the way they dress, the way they're armed, and everything. So they're just walking right through the front gate of Falm with their 3 spears on their back and their bucklers and their shofa. And
I don't know if this is giving them too much credit or not enough credit. Could it be that the reason they put Falm in the desert is so that the Aiel wouldn't stick out?
It's still the dress is still cultural though. We don't see anybody else coming in with their camels dressed like that.
No, they're not dressed like that. But a couple episodes ago, when we saw that camel caravan going towards Falm, they were dressed in a similar Arabic-ish manner.
Yeah, but you're still letting 3 women with 3 spears on their backs and bucklers walk through the gate, heavily armed. a big dude with them who looks completely
Somebody get him
different.
a freaking axe for crying out loud.
We
That
get
was
to
what I
that,
shout. I know we get to that eventually, but I kept shouting that through the whole episode. Somebody give that boy an axe.
which is funny because he picks it up in the finale of the first one, and then you never see it again until the finale of the second one. But as we digress. All right, then we get to Ishii and Lanfear again. I don't know what to say about this one. This one was cheesy, even though they're even though Ferris is good and O'Keefe is good. I balance you.
This to me screamed of piss poor direction. This was Hayden.
It screamed the forced trying to get you on with the plot.
Yes, but well, no, the because when I watched that scene, I was these are two actors who are good at their craft, but they're they're confined by crappy direction is what it seemed like to me. This is Natalie Portman who had been established. She was a legitimate child actress, and Hayden Christensen, who, if you've seen him in things subsequently, he can actually act. But then you watch the Star Wars prequels, and you think, how did these two ever get hired? They can't act their way out of a paper bag. Well, it's because the direction was crap, and that's what I see here. Because this was the worst I have seen those two in the entire series,
Yeah.
and it was something was off about the writing and the direction of that scene that
Well,
I don't think
you can almost see in the actor and actress in their line saying, "What is the point of this scene?"
exactly
Yeah.
whoever was directing that scene didn't actually know what, and this is really my big picture that I was leading up to with the finale here is that, and I've referenced this before, this is not a story. This is a collection of scenes that someone thinks looks cool.
And then we get the fog coming to the open gates, so we can get back to that right away. So we get one scene in between Perrin seeing it and then it coming up. And my comment here that I wrote down was fog coming, middle of the day in the desert. Open the gates, of course. That's what they did. They opened the gates, and two people walk out and say,
Who
"What
was it
is this?"
exactly? And was it the
I mean,
Aiel? Was
who?
it Avienda or someone who comments that that's not natural?
Yeah,
Somebody comments
that was in the
before that
scene. That was in the
that's not
scene on the Perrin
natural.
approaching. Yeah.
And
No, it was the tall Aiel, and she says that's not natural. People will wake from the dream today, is what she says.
which was another thing that jumped out at me is again saying things, doing things they've never bothered to set up. Have they? I don't recall them ever explaining what that means in the show.
Sort of when Avienda and Perrin were at the campfire eating together after he
Okay.
quote unquote rescued her, even though she did all the fighting. Uh, and so yeah, so that was semi explained earlier,
Okay.
where she kind of mentions it, and it was kind of obvious what she was talking about. But the thing is, this fog is coming up in the middle of the desert, and their response is to open the gates and send two guards out to see what it is, and keep the gates open. There you go, defensive from this awesome military, the undefeated army. If you've read the books, the
Well, and they do. I don't remember exactly how they set it up in season 2 here, but they do establish that this is a very scary, powerful force, or at least they try to. But then again, contrivances. They don't know how to tell a story. I referenced it before when I was talking about the show Ahsoka and the character Admiral Thrawn in the Star Wars universe, the expanded universe, who's a very problematic character if you're not a really good writer, because the person who invented the character was a really good writer. And again, to reiterate, he's a Sherlock Holmes type character. He's the smartest guy in the room. Well, that's difficult to write because you have to be smart enough to think, okay, how does this guy come up with a really, really incredible plan that no one sees coming, right? So Bornhold, we want to establish him as this competent and capable commander, and we have to get inside the city because we don't have the budget to have, the Battle of the Bastards. We don't have that budget, so we can't do it outside the city like is in the books. So how do we get them in the city? Oh, well, they just have some kids walking in front with some Catholic censors and they create a giant fog bank. You're a freaking idiot.
They could have mitigated it by having them do it in the wee hours of the morning when fog would actually be a problem. Because the thing about being invaders to Falm is you don't know what the weather patterns are there.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have at least, in my book, you could have at least done it when it's like, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, when something like fog would be a problem, and then shown fog over the water outside. So it would have been realistic
Mm-hmm.
that this is a thing.
If you did,
You could have done that same pan in of the city with darkness and have fog over the water that we already had. So you could use the same CGI, put fog on it, and then it had it go through the city and out the gate and have those same people with the censures making fog. And that would have connected everything.
mm-hmm.
No budget needed because you're using the same scene.
They're not that clever, or
Why
they're
are we poor talking about this when we could, we could just be the idea guys back in the room with the flipping a pencil around going,
because we're not well
oh,
connected because we weren't on a crappy reality TV show. So it is, again, it's not, these aren't storytellers, these are scene makers. And they thought, ooh, this will look really cool. They didn't think about or didn't care whether
but I
or
just
not it
made a
made
scene in
sense.
10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now on to Nynaeve. And my comment here was I think I might be burnt out at this point.
This
Nynaeve's using Adam when she was kind of basically torturing this girl in
yeah,
semi-vengeance and everything, which actually is not completely out of character, but it just had no impact on me. Even though I've kind of grown to love Nynaeve as a character, it just didn't do it for me. I was like, okay, just let's go.
this
Okay, so you've established this. Let's go get to the rescue. Let's go.
this episode, and again, I have tried as much as possible to critique this within its own self, separate from the books. Remember how much we praised that scene where Nynaeve drank the dirty water?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
that was Nynaeve. That's who that character is. And you even saw that in the first season. They have done a mediocrely decent job at building up who this character is. They completely ruin it. Nynaeve is utterly and completely ruined in this episode because all she does is cry and suck. She doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
What happened to this strong female character that, we're supposed to love strong female characters? You've established her already. You've established
Yeah,
her in
but
her pursuit of land. You established her in her standing
this
up
is
to
where
Alana and
this
drinking the
is
dirty
where
water.
the social sciences and the misconception about what a strong female character is comes in, and it kind of conflicts with itself, because her being angry and vengeful is considered strong because that's what a man would do.
But then she's not able to use that to actually accomplish something. Because the whole
Well,
point of the books is she gets angry and she can channel. She never gets angry and channels in this entire
oh,
freaking
yeah, you're
episode.
getting ahead of us. You're getting ahead of us here because she's doing it with Adam right now. But we don't, we, no, that's to take your point. She completely flips here once things go bad. So let's get to that by skipping to Matt and the dagger, because Peyton Fane comes in. It is apparently supposed to tempt him with the dagger and puts it out there and just, where's the finesse in this whole thing? Oh, we know you love this thing. Here it is in front of you. It's an Oreo cookie. Are you going to eat it? This is the freaking marshmallow test put into a show, right? It's are you going to eat this? Or are you going to benefit later from having to? Everything is so freaking forced and so childish. It's so freaking juvenile. It's just blowing me away. And credit to Matt, he actually did, or Matt, what's his name? Finn is his actor.
I think so.
He did a decent job of doing the best with this scene.
Yeah.
And I'm getting more and more annoyed with the guy who plays Patton Fane. He just, I didn't see a switch from the annoying guy that was a peddler, which you kind of think would happen, versus the annoying guy who's the dark friend who wants to
Yeah.
destroy the world. But yeah, this, he just basically, here it is. Are you going to be tempted? Left the room. I just left a deadly implement of death that you could use against me in your hands, and I'm going to just hang out outside. Surprise, surprise. He uses it against him. Oh my goodness. That was a plot twist. We didn't expect that to come. Then we get back to Moiraine and Lan on the beach, and we have this touching moment where Lan is being the same simp he's been in the last 12 episodes. And because he talked about his feelings, she finally understood.
Here's why this scene pissed me off, though, is because they made a point, and even in one of the recaps in one of the first episodes, they showed stuff from the first season. They tried to make a point about the importance of the water bond, and yet they made it utterly disposable. You just release it, pass it on, put it back on. It is utterly disposable. Again, much like with Nynaeve and undermining everything they had tried to establish previously, once again, they have completely undermined something they were trying, not very successfully, but they were at least trying to establish, which was from the very beginning, where you get to see Lan's butt, is the from that first episode, the importance and the strength of that water bond. I mean, they spent a couple of episodes with Waters dying and and Lan smashing his nipples to show you the importance of the water bond, and here it's something utterly disposable.
Yeah, and so we talk about the bad guys being the best actors. Uh, uh, what's his name? Peter Franzane. I think that's his name. The guy who
Who?
played Steppen.
Oh yeah, I can't remember.
I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, Peter, and I don't know what this symbol is in his language, but it looks like Franzane. He was one of the best actors in the whole thing. And to your point of emphasizing the water bond, he was it in about 2 episodes hammered that home, and this whole Lan Moiraine interaction is taking everything away from what he did. They're what did it say? They stand on the shoulder of giants. They're trying to do this force story around what they did with this one character a bunch of episodes ago.
Yeah.
So they're
Except
hoping,
instead of strengthening and building on, they have completely cheapened.
yeah, they're hoping that your memory of that one episode is going to help you to kind of personify this whole situation, which is not, because you need them to still pull it off.
It is skipping ahead a little bit. It is the cheap emotional manipulation that comes from Hopper's death. They want you to feel that, and they have the they have the melancholy music and the awful actor focusing in on Hopper as he dies, but you never bothered to establish that bond.
Let's get to that scene here as soon as we can, because we might actually differ on that one. But yeah, I just thought this scene was forced, but yeah, we end up with the desired result where everything's good again, and they basically, with the power kiss and kiss and make up. Cheap sets. What are cheap sets? Loyal and dumb speech about, oh gosh, yeah. When Perrin and the three new girls run into Loyal and Ingtar, and somehow we just skip the whole Loyal and Ingtar getting the horn part, but they're running away with it, and
We haven't had time to talk about the last season of Witcher, and partly because I keep forgetting about it. I watched the whole damn thing, and I keep forgetting it existed.
yeah, and
But
I'm not
one
going to
of
rewatch it. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
what one of my first thoughts in one of the first few episodes was, isn't it amazing how people just show up when they're needed? Is just utterly contrived. It's, oh look, Perrin's here, Loyal's here, Matt's here now. Look, there's Egwene now. Oh, not even Elaine, you're here now.
Yeah, but
It's
when I was talking about
utterly
cheap
contrived.
sets, the where they ran into each other was the
Yes.
exact same scene that Elaine and Nynaeve ran through, and we had all these other things and it's the same paper mache walls,
Yeah.
with the same little curtain that he runs through and everything. But then we get this speech from Loyal about uh being the heroes, and we should be the heroes because we're and it's like, have you read the books?
Nope.
Loyal would be like, don't be so hasty. Let's regroup outside of this place where all these hasty battle people are
Yep.
being hasty. uh it, yeah, it would have been Ingtar that made a speech there if you really wanted to have that moment. uh
That was another, again, the oh, the terrible anticlimax of the climax here with Ingtar never got his moment
Yeah,
is
and they tried to just throw it in there. And so this is the biggest problem with this whole episode, was they threw in things for book readers that were not done well for the book. Like, oh, one man could hold off 50 here. They say that and then they run
and
off.
then he dies in 30 seconds
Yeah,
while
well,
they're standing there looking at him.
yeah,
So
yeah,
his
so
sacrifice meant nothing.
exactly, yeah. So wait, does that scene happen yet?
I don't
Okay,
know.
so no, we have a scene between that. But yeah, it's a poor substitute for Ingtar's real story, because what should have been done at some point in this little sequence here.
They never established him as a dark friend, did they, in the
No,
show?
no. And so what could have happened here is we could have had them all come together, but instead of Loyal's speech, we could have had them all trying to get out with the horn. And something happened where Perrin, this happened with Rand and Ingtar in the books, but you could
Mm-hmm.
add Perrin here. Perrin and Ingtar confess to letting the Dark Friends in,
Yeah.
letting Ped Fane. He could even going with the story the way they have it. I
Well,
let Ped Fane into the
one
thing,
of
and
the one of the few good parts of this season was one of the first or second episode where Ingtar does have his moment there of, they do a decent job of condensing the speeches that he gives over those several chapters of the opening of the Great Hunt, of humanity's fault. Humanity is in decline. Humanity is failing. That's why he turned to the dark, because he has dedicated his life to fighting the shadow on the borderlands, and humanity doesn't care.
okay, so we're gonna get to Ingtar again here in a second, but then we get to Rand confronting Turok and his guards,
Ugh.
and I wrote I hate you, Wraith here, but
Mm.
I want to say this is the worst moment of the whole thing, but there's so many bad moments I can't even. But okay,
I
so we finally get, okay, so us book fans, we get Rand walking up, we get a bunch of guards, and we get Turok.
mm,
Turok pulls his sword. We know he's a sword master. He talks about the heron. He pulls it out. We see the heron.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're wondering how he's going to fight with those long ass fingernails, but at the same time, we see the heron, we see Turok, we know what happens in the books. Turok is beating the shit out of Rand, and Rand pulls a land move that is basically self-sacrifice to win the day. It,
Well, here's why they couldn't do that though, because what he does in the books is he finally embraces the oneness, the emptiness, the flame and the void. He's been avoiding that in the books because that's what brings on the one power, and he's afraid to touch Sidon. They can't
instead,
do
we
that
get
because he's
him.
been channeling willy-nilly.
Instead, we get him embracing it all and just killing everybody at once.
And here's what I think that was supposed to be. And again, back something you said a few minutes ago, that um they have these things for book readers. I don't think they're just Easter eggs. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that Rafe and some of these people actually read the books and actually liked the books. Unfortunately, frankly, they clearly aren't smart enough to know why they felt that way when they read the books. Because I think what this scene is supposed to mimic is Raiders of the Lost Ark. Why did that scene work? That scene worked because that was like 2/3 of the way through the movie, and Harrison Ford was literally sick as a dog. He had the flu and he said, I'm not doing this. And he just pulls out his gun and he shoots the guy. That's what this scene is supposed to be, I think. It's supposed to be Raiders of the Lost Ark. Here's the guy with the sword, and he just pulls out his 38 and he shoots the guy. Okay, that worked because that character had been established. We had seen him fight. We had seen him come to his limit. We had seen him, had the crap beat out of him and he's in the end of his rope. And so you get this great cathartic release and you get this laugh at that scene. We haven't had any of that build up. There's nothing here. It's just, oh, okay. All right, well, that's that. All right, fine, whatever, move on. There was no that this scene was completely flat to me, and I think they thought they were going to get the kind of reaction that you get when you first watch Raiders of the Lost Ark and see, Harrison Ford look exasperated at the swordsman and just pull out his gun and shoot him.
Yeah. Okay, so I understand what you're saying. And I understand how they would think that. But no, it was just like it wasn't built. Yeah, it wasn't built up the same, because when you talk about that one scene, even if you take that scene from just that clip from the end of the clip, where so the guy pulls out his sword and starts doing all the fancy stuff, and Indy goes and blows him up, and it's over. That had more build up than this. It
No,
was,
that's my point. Is
yeah.
again, they're not storytellers; they're scene makers. Is that they
But
have
even still,
taken
that's why I clipped it the way I did, because that was one scene.
yes,
That scene in and of itself would make a fan that would want to go and watch the whole movie. This scene wouldn't do that. This scene would have been this scene is why they kept that out of the freaking trailer.
that's a good point because in the trailer is Turok taking the sword and doing his kata crap. Yeah,
Yeah, and yeah, because then it would have been, you wouldn't even need the comments about hair and marked blades or anything like that. It would have been, yeah. I see what they're going for now, but it just, I can't even tell you how you would fix it because it's just so bad.
well, so for instance, one of the things that annoyed me briefly because I often watch things in the back of my mind. I'm thinking how I would write it. And so there was this brief moment where I thought Rand killed all the guards. And then you see the blood spurting out of Turok's throat, and I go, "Oh, he just killed them all." So this scene is pointless because the scene is such a mess. And here's a good example of that.
No. This is the difference. This is the difference. Okay, so this is what I was mulling over in my mind, and I couldn't parse out what the difference was. Turok was set up to be a boss battle. The guy in Indiana Jones before that scene was a random dude. That's the difference.
Yes.
Because, okay, so we get this random dude come out and do all these awesome things with his sword and him go, and blow him away with a gun.
And
that
that's
was
why
funny. Turok being this leader of the undefeated army, which gets fooled by girls with a cistern, or a freaking whatever they call that thing, that
Censor, I think is what it's called.
Censor, yeah, okay, yeah, I was
Yeah.
close. Cistern is piss, but this one is fog, but yeah, the leader of this whole army that establishes himself as a swords master that we know is supposedly a badass. He's a boss fight when we really think about it, where this guy in Indiana Jones was a minion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the difference. You do that to a minion, it's comic relief. You do that in a boss fight, it's anticlimactic.
It's doubly so in this scene, and because this is a great example of how this scene is crap, and how these writers don't understand how storytelling works, is because look at the scene. Turok says what he says in the book. Let's see what it takes to earn the heron on this side of the ocean. And he pulls out his sword and he does his wah 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 stuff. But then all his guards go yeah and lower their spears. They should have stepped aside.
Mm-hmm.
If you understood who the character is and what he's doing here and why it worked the way it did in the books, the guards would have all shouldered their spears and stepped to the side so that it would be one-on-one. They don't understand that.
All right, let's fast forward a little bit because I got maybe about 20 minutes before I got to head. Okay, so now we get back to Ingtar, and he says one man could hold 50 here, and yet they just keep running.
And
first of all, they
dies.
leave the place that could hold 50, and then he jumps in like he's going to fight, like everything else, which was very ambiguous. And then everybody else fights with him instead of one man competing 50, and then he dies, and then they all run anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that killed him run after them, but they don't ever establish that spot was held. So yeah. So my comment here was yet they all end up fighting anyways. They wanted Ingtar, or they wasted Ingtar is what I said. And then I hope they do better with Masama going forward.
Well, I think that's the entire point of this scene, is they're trying to set up Masama because he has seen Uno die. He has seen Ingtar die. He has seen the futility of all of this.
You could have done that with him being pushed forward while Ingtar was holding the gap.
But they don't know how to do that, in the same way that they don't know how to make a strong female character unless they make a crappy male character that she steps on. Same idea, same principle.
And then we get to let's bail Dominant.
Why was he even here? Why was he even in this episode?
Okay, so I know why he was here if you fast forward to the end.
Yes.
So do you want to just save it to then, or
yeah, but it was still mostly pointless. Yeah.
Okay. All right, then we get back to Matt, who makes his spear out of the dagger with a bedpost and some linens. Does anybody here ever been a kid and tried to do something like that with a knife and a stick? It doesn't work the way they showed it work. It's not. You think
you've made a spear and it immediately goes.
Yeah, especially when you can't actually touch it to tie it very tightly. So yeah, that's not going to work. I understand what they're trying to do, except they're trying to, we've already skipped the doorway, so we might as well skip every step all the way to the Ashendari. And just make it out of the dagger, by the way, which he did everything he could to get away from in the books.
If they keep this going forward in the next season, I'm going to laugh out of my chair because it's so stupid, rather than giving him the actual Ashendari. But to me, it was more egregious that they flat out say, it's not that I'm Matt and I'm a big damn hero because I'm a good person and I'm, this is who I am. It's, I'm a hero of the Horn, so I'm special.
Oh, we're getting to that. Hold on. We're not there yet.
We're
not there yet.
All right. Back up.
No, we just make him make this makeshift weapon, and that's crap that we know what it's supposed to represent. And he goes off and chase Paddon Fane, and he's doing his thing. Then we get to the big giant battle. Egwene's on the tower doing her thing, and she finally blows some people up, but is still defiant. And then we get a catapult. And I'm like, they were talking about targeting the tower the whole time.
Mhm.
Why did we just now get a catapult hitting the tower
Mhm.
instead of before the whole battle was going on and all the Soldam and Domine could get up there? We don't know. But yeah. So we get a catapult, blows everything up, and Egwene gets free. Oh, and then fast forward. What is it? Explanation of the soul band. I think it's the interaction between Egwene and Rena at this point, where Egwene just basically tells us
Yeah.
that, oh, it's because you're weak in the power that,
Uh-huh.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
not
Look
how
at
it
me.
is.
I
It's the
figured
ones
it
that
out.
can learn the power that
Exactly.
were sold in
Exactly.
before. Yeah.
But
It just made it cartoony.
it made it again within its own world. It is asinine because this should have been a duck season, rabbit season thing. Is you're both collared, which first of all, how does that even work? But secondly, okay, assuming it does work, then you should both be in excruciating pain.
Yeah. Well, and they tried to show that, but the actress did a horrible job of, because she was like, if
Okay.
I'm choking, you're choking, and you see the Egwene actress going a little bit, but she's not actually like dying. And so it, in what we know
And
from the
all
books, it should
and
be
you know
10
what?
times.
And all you really needed there to for plausible it still wouldn't have been good, but you would have at least had plausible deniability if you would have had a Gawain like with some difficulty because she is choking, say something to the effect, I've had 3 months to get used to it.
Yeah, except we've got one huge plot hole which they did with the pitcher, which we talked about, which they did well to put it as part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Then the collar itself would have been a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So she would never have been able to put it on the Soldan.
Neither one of them should have been able to do anything.
No,
They
no,
would
she wouldn't have
have
been
both
able
should
to
have
collar
stood there.
Rena to begin with.
Well, she used a different collar, so you can kind of
But
see how you could get away with that.
she knew what it would do.
That's a good point.
She knew what it would do, and if she knew
That's a
what
good point.
it would do, she knew it was a weapon.
But even with the maximum benefit of the doubt, the best case scenario there should have been they should have just both sat there and stared at each other until someone came along to bail Egwene, to help Egwene, which is basically what happened in the
Instead,
book.
she hung her to death. I had to watch that scene
And
twice
somehow didn't
because I
kill
thought she just
herself. Yeah.
I thought she just passed out, but then I watched it again. I'm like, no, she actually let her die. She's dead.
Yes. So then why isn't Egwene dead? Because you were
Exactly.
both Soldam and Domine at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Even within your own world, this makes absolutely no sense.
What was the next scene? Because I wrote so much for having to see your weaves. Somebody did something from a
Uh,
blind perspective.
oh, is that when they shield Rand?
Yes. Yeah. When they shield Rand from the boat, they can't shield him unless they
There's
can see him.
no way they can see him. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was stupid. Then the horn looks dumb. They
Yep.
finally show the horn and it looks retarded.
Mm-hmm.
And for the scene is that he cuts the thing open with the dagger instead of just using a puzzle box, which is something Perrin should have been able to do because he does blacksmith puzzles. But that's beside the point.
Or just establish that Matt is clever.
Yeah. One of the two. One of the
Give
two.
me a second and take the box and fiddle with it while they're
Yeah.
Matt, hurry up.
But we'll use the power of the dagger because
Yeah.
the power of evil things is better than being clever in this show. Then we get to Hopper's death. And this is where I might disagree with you a little bit because this scene was probably the only scene in the entire series that garnered an emotional reaction from me. Because it was Hopper's death, which Hopper showing up was kind of random, considering the relationship we established, considering he would have been a wolf running into a war-torn city with soldiers and all of these things that would say a wolf wouldn't get all the way to where Perrin was. especially since he wouldn't know where he is because they weren't communicating back and forth. But throw all that aside. Hopper gets there and he kills or no, he attacks people attacking Perrin, which is fine. Okay, so we throw away all that other stuff. Okay, we're getting Hopper back into it. Then Elder Bornhold sees this, which is understandable, and decides to kill the wolf because the whole wolf,
He's attacking one of his men. Yeah.
he's attacking one of his men. So he attacks Hopper, kills Hopper. Perrin gets mad, kills Elder Bornhold. And this affected me a little bit more than the other ones because they actually did a good job here of killing off two relatively innocent characters at once who died for
Yes.
misunderstandings.
That part of it worked. The problem that didn't work is twofold. One, the scene was way too damn long. I wanted to see Perrin get up and go berserk almost immediately, and instead
Yeah,
it
that would have been
dragged
better.
on.
Yeah,
It
that would have been
dragged
better.
on way
Yeah.
too long. And two, the only real emotional payoff there is the fact that you're seeing a dog die. And we all like cute dogs, and the dog died. And you have done a somewhat decent job of establishing the Elder Bornhold as a decent person who's on the wrong side.
Mm-hmm.
But they have not
Well,
established
and
a
that
Hopper Perrin connection.
yeah, and that's probably what brought it there was this was to me an example of innocence caught in the crossfire with both characters. Which, if they were going for it, I don't give them the benefit of the doubt on this. That wrote this, they were going for like you said, dog died.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the best scene of the whole episode, at least.
Yeah, yeah, because it was the only one that made any sense and had at least a little bit of setup.
Well, to see, yeah, and it's the only one that will have payoff later too,
Yes,
because
yes.
we also need Dane to hate Perrin, and we see later when Perrin kills Senior Bornhold, he says two rivers and gets dragged away.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need those things to happen. And so this is the only one that will have payoff later that I think has happened in the whole episode. Then we get to the scene you were talking about. Matt blows the horn, and my comment was, did children write this stuff? Because it really was. It was like out of a children's story.
It's fan
Bum,
fiction. Yeah.
bum. I'm a hero of the horn. Everything we just talked about this was the moment. And remember, I said a couple episodes ago on this topic, they're going to have a turnaround for Matt. I expected it to be bad, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. I didn't expect it to be dun dun dun. Oh, look at me. I'm a famous person in history.
I wonder if a big part of this contrived crap is because this is an easier way to get him his memories than going through the doorway.
There's
This
that.
this is how he becomes a great general, is because he somehow has accessed the memories of his previous lives.
Yeah, and I can see that. And I can see that happening, but the delivery was horrible.
Yes.
They could have had him blowing the horns, all these people showing up, and Hawkwing still being the head of it,
Mm-hmm.
and it being a doorway where later on he's like, ever since I blown that horn, I just can't think straight,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And then you could have started incorporating the memories, and you could have kept it central around the horn. That would have been fine. But the way they did it was like, dun da da, look at me, I'm a hero now. Yay, I doubted myself for so long, but I can do it.
I just had to believe in myself.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just had to believe in myself. Was always a hero for the horn. Brigitte should have been hotter, by the way.
Where was the short, ugly guy standing next to her?
And then Uno, Yeah, let's
just out of
okay. So,
nowhere.
so
Yeah.
this actually makes sense of the what we talked about when they killed him. Was I can't believe you killed this person that's a fan favorite. Well, they had the plan of bringing him back as a hero of the horn all the time to make a snarky comment of, "Oh, you didn't think I would be a hero of the horn?" And he also provides the Captain America shield, by the way, which was used here in a little bit. So we'll get to that.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, Uno is a hero for the horn. By the way, they could have had a better actor. I've been complaining about this the whole time. And two, it was so contrived. It was so bad.
It was fan fiction. It was swelling music cheese that you think is going to be awesome, but it's crap.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was not only crap, it was I crapped on my old crap so it smelled worse. Uh okay, then Matt does his thing on the port, and then so to me this Matt fighting at the end. Uh we can never have the Gawain Gallad scene now because we
Mm-hmm.
had this Matt scene.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only reason the original Matt scene worked was because we only have a little insight in his mind of doing quarterstaffs with his dad.
Mm-hmm. So it
Whereas
comes out of
now,
nowhere. Yeah.
yeah, now we have Matt besting 10 Shanjan soldiers with a makeshift spear, sword, slash staff thingy. Granted, it's evil and corrupts anything it touches, which we still are ignoring, but he's doing flippy, flyy things that all of a sudden come out of nowhere because he remembers he's a hero of the horn. I remember everything.
Yeah.
And then we get to the finale, which starts with just Egwene, then Rand and Egwene. No. So it starts with just Rand,
Mm-hmm.
and then Egwene comes in and saves the day after his shield. And then Perrin comes in with his Captain America shield, who he got from Uno, and saves the day again because he adds his shield to Egwene's shield. And then we get Elaine and Nynaeve come up after Nynaeve's been injured, or Elaine's been injured, but Nynaeve can't do shit because she can't get angry, which if they had established that, that would have been a good thing. But I could see why you would be pissed off here. So that would also be a bad thing. So Elaine heals kind of ish Rand. And then we get to Moiraine and Lan. Oh no, we skipped over Matt stabbing.
Yep. Throwing the spear and hitting Rand. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which of all the ways that viewing could have gone, that one's not the worst.
All right.
We
That
speculated
yeah.
about a lot of them, but that one actually was like, okay, man, I see what they were doing there. They're creating the wound in his side, but it was Matt that did it.
Mm-hmm.
Through Balsamon, not so that just tells me they're never gonna have the second part, the Pat
Mm-hmm.
and Fane slash. So
I
they
was
just
waiting for them to somehow come up with the second part then and there. I was
yeah.
I was I was thinking they were going to rush it and somehow contrive a way to do it then and there. And I'm not sure which is worse, the fact that they didn't or if they would have. I don't know which is worse. They both would have been crap. But here is before we get to the crap finale is um
Well,
did you watch
I actually have a good comment before we get to the finale. So
okay, go
you
ahead.
go, yeah, no, you go.
All right. They keep creating problems for themselves of so you saw I mentioned this with Lanfear the last episode is that she's just walking through the foregate blowing the ever living crap out of stuff and no one notices and no one can do anything about her, so then you have to wonder, well, why don't they just take over the whole world like that if they're that strong? And now you get it with Moiraine here. It's if it for anyone who watched the awful Star Wars sequels, and the second one, The Last Jedi, where they have this contrived move that blows up like this entire fleet, and you're like, and you're left thinking, okay, you did that because it was a visual spectacle, but now you have to ask, well, why don't they just always do that? Well,
Yeah.
same thing here. Rather than the freaking heroes of the freaking horn are who destroy the Sanchin and the Sanchin fleet, Moiraine does it by herself. So then why can't the Aes Sedai just do anything they want?
Okay, so I will steel man that one. The Heroes of the Horn did that to the entire force in the city, but Moiraine was able to do it to the fleet because all of their attention was focused on shielding Rand, and so it was a surprise. And so if it's not a surprise like that, and all their attention isn't focused elsewhere, that never would have worked. So that would be me steel manning that the way they wrote it.
But
But
you've still established that an Aes Sedai, and not even the most powerful one, because they have established that Egwene and Elaine and Nynaeve are more powerful than Moiraine. They have established that in the show. She can destroy an entire fleet of a very dangerous invading force. So then what are you going to do the next time you need it? You have a threat that you want to pose to the heroes. Why doesn't Moraine just blow them up?
because the attention is focused on them, or it's a Forsaken.
Mm.
We're getting bigger and better. It's the Marvel movies all over again. You got to get
Mm.
bigger and badder and bigger and badder and bigger and badder until it's supernatural at some point. So we'll have Thanos at some point. But the positive was right before that happens when Lan is trying to stop her, and she says, "I will let 1,000 innocents die."
Mm.
And then Lan says, "Oh shit, okay, yeah, I get your point." Yeah, it was a kind of a contrived scene, but that line accomplished more than the first 7 episodes of this entire season with establishing what Moraine would do to get the goal done. We could have had that sort of line a long time ago from her.
Mm-hmm.
And we might have gone a little out of order because my next note was Perrin Captain America. So,
Well, you already talked about that. Is this
yeah.
somehow the force? The leader, not just a Forsaken, the leader of the Forsaken, the chief lieutenant of the Dark One himself, is somehow powerless against a mundane shield. Now, granted, it was given to him by a hero of the Horn,
Yeah,
but you
and from what
didn't
I
do a
understand,
great job of establishing what that
and
means.
from what I got from that scene after kind of like rewatching it a couple times was that it added to what Egwene was doing, which makes no sense from a non-channeler standpoint, especially
Mm-hmm.
a non-channeler male who, if he was a channeler, wouldn't know how to link with a female. But yeah, details aside, right? But then it just got really lame when all of this is going on and Rand goes through to confront him, and you're like, okay, here's the finale, and he
Yeah, he
walks up and
just
stabs him.
stabs him. Yeah. After out of the after the line about you can't stand against one of the Forsaken, after what we've seen Lanfear do, after what we've seen Ishii himself do, after all of that buildup of it's I have this plan to turn him, and it's too early. This isn't going to work, and I'm just going to have to kill him, and we'll try again next time. And he just stands there and dies. When
And
it is
and
when
then
from
they
literally the beginning of the episode you established he is tired of the cycle. He wants the end.
which is what they tried to pull into the end, which was he was like, it's finally over. I'm finally gonna die. But he's not dying the final death.
And he would know that.
He would know that. He would be the person that knows that.
Mm-hmm.
Rand wouldn't know that as well as him. Nobody other than probably Lanfear in this whole thing would know that as well as him. And then we get the dragon. And I said, so gay. Sorry if that gets us canceled, but so gay. The only thing about this scene that I took a little bit from, and I hope it was on purpose, and I hope something comes out of it because of our whole discussion with the books, is did it not look like Egwene in this scene looked jealous?
That was the only slight positive I took from this is the setting up of Egwene of when she becomes, because she see what first of all, you've made a complete mess of the Adam, but let's set that aside for a second because she's not. She can somehow now ignore the Adam when she doesn't want to channel and blow people up. Now she can ignore orders, but in the cell when she's being trained, she can't. But whatever, let's set that aside. But then when she sees the White Cloaks and she sees Valda, and now she's vindictive. All right, well, you've got a big mess there with the Adam, but you're setting up that there's a darkness within her,
Mm-hmm. Which
right?
would go with that Ishii line of one wants power.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was the literally, I think, the only good thing to come out of this episode is establishing a flaw in Egwene's character.
Yeah, and realistically, I don't know if it was bad acting or it was on purpose, but she looked jealous looking up at Rand when the dragon was behind him.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're going to make a good thing out of this scene, that would be the only thing I could think of. Otherwise, it was so cheap. It was
Right.
so
So besides the fact it looked cheap, it
no, but I'm talking
was
about just the idea of it was cheap.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it looked cheap. It looked cheesy. It looked like, oh, this is Wheel of Time done by the CW. Um, Structurally, it was cheap because they wanted the moment where you have the visual and you have the swelling music and you have the crowd cheering because that's the finale of a fantasy, right? That is the finale of the hero's arc, the hero's journey, the classic fantasy tale. Except you have done not only have you done absolutely nothing to earn this, but you have contradicted it because why the hell are the people of Falm cheering you? They should be cheering the White Cloaks. The only thing you established here in this is that the White Cloaks are the heroes. That's who the people of Falm should be cheering. Why are they cheering the dragon? First of all, as we've ranted about, how does everybody know so much about the dragon?
Well,
Yeah,
and if they knew what the dragon was, they would be scared because he's
he is
supposed to break
Kinslayer.
the
He is
world.
Luz
Yeah.
Theron Kinslayer. They have established that in the series, so you're cheering for the Kinslayer. Just in general as an overarching idea, but then particularly here, you wanted this moment, but you did absolutely nothing to set it up. Why is this whole city suddenly cheering this person who they know nothing about and they saw do nothing to help them?
Because there's a flaming dragon over him.
Exactly. There's a big cheap
And
flaming
I mean
CG
that in the
dragon.
Uno voice, the original Uno voice, and the sarcastic
Flaming
voice.
dragons. Yeah.
Flaming dragons.
All
Oh,
right.
there was
So
so
then
much
we
wrong with
then
this.
we get the denouement, which is the confrontation between Lanfear and Malkidian. And by
Yeah,
that point, I was so checked out I didn't care, but that too was crap.
yeah. I mean, I can see the actress doing okay with Moghedian, but I just can't see from knowing the lore that direct of a confrontation
Exactly,
between
but even
Moghedian
within the
and
show,
Lanfear.
she's singing the little song and she makes the points of she's the one in shadows, she's the web spinner. You're talking about how you're the one in shadow, and yet you're directly confronting her.
Which again could have been fixed so easily because you could have had Lanfear walking in, seeing all these open Quendalar seals, and then her getting trapped from behind.
Mm-hmm.
That so easy. Her trapped from behind, and then the confrontation, and then Moghedian fading into the shadows, and then her being untrapped. Not directly confronted, directly trapping, giving her a little monologue, releasing her, and then leaving. The things that would have got her killed in the lore.
Mm-hmm.
It's it, it wasn't it didn't even it wouldn't even made any cinematic difference. I don't see what advantage you get from the way they did it.
I think they're trying because she's something of a major figure in the next couple of books. I think they're trying to set Moghidian up. That was their way of establishing Moghidian as a credible antagonist.
Yeah, except they're setting her up as a face-to-face credible antagonist,
Uh-huh.
where they
And,
could have
and
made her a credible antagonist from the shadows, which they said verbally, but they didn't do with actions.
and once again, I think the directing here is crap because to her credit, O'Keefe does a good job of looking scared without going over the top, but Lanfear shouldn't look scared. You've established her as the chief badass, second only to, or perhaps, 1A and 1B to a Shamael.
Mhm.
And now she's scared of the spider. She's scared of the person that, by what Malkavian says in the scene, you called me weak. So she's scared of someone that she called weak.
Yeah,
Why are you?
which would have the lines would have made more sense if she got caught off guard.
Yes.
But she didn't get caught off guard here. She walked face to face, knew who she was talking to, and still got caught off guard.
Mm-hmm. That for whatever reason, the people who adhere to this ideology have no ability to create something or create an idea, a character strong in his or her own right. They can only do it to what you said about in part one, because their whole ideology is based off of power hierarchies. So someone can only be strong if they're stepping down and pushing down on someone else. They cannot be strong in their own right. And that's what they've done here. To establish Malkavian as strong, you have to kick down, you have to push down Lanfear. That the fact that undermines all the work that you have done this entire season for Lanfear, they either don't care or they don't understand.
Well, and there's also just to close this out because I do have to go. Lanfear's last line makes me wonder
Mm.
if they're going to try to have a redemption arc for Lanfear
Mm-hmm.
because their last line was light help you Rand.
Yeah, I had that thought as well too of what just happened here. Are they? Yeah, I think they're. I suspect they may be trying to have a redemption arc for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least a redemption enough before she goes crazy because she's jealous or something. But it's I just see that coming for some reason.
All right. Well, I hope you have enjoyed our suffering, and I hope you didn't suffer through it yourself, and that we could give you some cathartic release for this awfulness, so that you don't have to endure it. It was,
Or if you did, you told your friends not to watch it.
yeah,
That's
yeah. Um, I started mentally checking out more and more as the season went on, because I had a lot of notes, I had a lot of thoughts early on, and then as the season went on, it was just, this is just awful, and I just don't
yeah.
care anymore.
And my final thought, because I do have to cut off here, is I think it was episode 4 you said was really boring, and I brought up that it was like they were trying to right the ship in a lot of ways.
Mm,
This episode was the opposite. There was so much action, but it was so much trying to, like you said, Easter egg the whole episode.
mm,
And that's not righting the ship. That's just try not to lose your audience while you're still doing your own thing.
yeah.
And that's what they did here, and it made it to me the worst episode of the whole thing, especially what they did with Matt, because again, we're
It was a climax that was not in the least bit climactic.
no. As much as they tried to make it so
Mhm.
with fiery dragons and stuff.
All right. Yeah, well, we will see y'all next time, where we will have a real climax, where we will go over the last several chapters of Winter's Heart and go over what an actual climax is supposed to look like. Giggity.
Yeah, I promise not to tube in it for this climax.